The following episode will contain spoilers. You have been warned.
You're listening to Cinema IRL, the podcast that throws you into the movie and asks the question, what would you do? Well, what would you do if you just got done watching a movie where the writer doesn't know what the word linear means? Amber and Scott discuss We Live in Time. And now, Cinema IRL.
I wish I could switch places for just one day.
What would you do?
Put yourself in my shoes.
How do we handle this?
What would you do?
Put yourself in my position.
What would you do?
Now it's your turn.
Do you remember the good old days when movies used to tell stories that started at the beginning and finished at the end and just went linear throughout? I miss that.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of jumping around in the timeline movies lately, haven't we?
We have.
So this episode, we are talking about We Live in Time. An up-and-coming chef finds her life forever changed by a chance encounter with a recent divorcee.
Wow, that is a terrible description.
Yeah, so our main characters here are, oh goodness, Almut and, oh geez, lack of
Yeah, don't look at me. I don't.
Anyway, so he is going through a divorce, and he has a pen that runs out of ink, and he has to go out to get a pen. And while he's out, he gets hit by a car driven by Almut.
I mean, he went out to get a pen in his robe. That dude was dealing with issues.
Yes, he was. Tobias. That was his name, Tobias. So that's how Tobias and Almut meet, and starting a whirlwind romance that, as they're going along, I imagine maybe it's several weeks or so, and she says something about not wanting kids. And he was like, I've always pictured myself having kids. And she was like, why are we talking about this? And he was like, well, it seems better to have a mature conversation about it now than a really awkward conversation about it in a couple of months.
Yeah, I'm already going to what would you do just straight up on this one.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a good conversation.
I had a rule when I was dating that I knew what you wanted to do with kids, if not before the first date, definitely by the end of it. Because it's like kids are one of those, there's usually kids in religion are like the two things that are just extremely make or break in relationships. Like if one person wants kids and the other one doesn't, you're done.
Yeah, it was interesting. Her approach was basically, why can't we enjoy where we are in the present moment? And he was more of the, do our futures align? And I gotta say, I really agree with him, because if you're investing time in a relationship and you don't have somewhat aligned goals, especially when it comes to children and family, I do think that's a deal breaker in many, many ways, unless you are really indifferent to it. But if you want kids and the other person doesn't, it's not the best use of time to try to convince the other person or think that they'll change their mind, coerce them, or whatever it is. So he ultimately ends up apologizing and saying, I understand you wanted to live in the moment. I, was trying to look at the future, but I just want you. And ultimately, they get back together, but she ends up having a kid.
Yeah.
With that, it's not like it wasn't coerced or she wasn't resentful. I think it just wound up happening, and she was fine with that and open to it.
I mean, you certainly can change your mind. I mean, she was like 34. I kind of figure by the time you're 34, you've probably got a pretty decent idea. I remember, I was married the first time to someone who already had kids, did not want more, and I had said, I want kids. And it was basically a deal breaker for me otherwise. And she had said, okay, well, if you want kids, I'm willing to have kids with you. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good enough, because then it's on me. And long story short, eventually we just decided, I decided that I was okay not having kids. So, I don't know, changing your mind from wanting to not wanting, I think, is one thing. But going from not wanting to wanting, I don't know. You can't expect that someone's going to change their mind if that's the direction they're really either direction.
Yeah. I think living in the moment and appreciating the relationship where it is okay in certain circumstances. But if you have long-term goals of, I want to get married and want to have a family, I don't know if you can embrace that level of being in the present and enjoying the moment when you're really out of sync.
If you're going into the first date not really concerned about a second date, then it's fine.
Sure. So they end up having a daughter, and she is growing as a chef, and she had actually been in a competition for chefs in the past. And so they have the daughter, and when she's a couple years old, Almut has cancer.
Well, no, I mean that's not even it. Like, this movie jumps around so much.
Yeah, she had it earlier, and then it was in remission.
Yeah, she had cancer, fought through it, went into remission, had the daughter, came back.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for correcting the timeline there. So at that point, they've pretty much said that she has 6 to 12 months, and they have a discussion about should it be six months of just good life, enjoying life, or should it be 12 months of going through the chemo and being sick and of just coping? And they ultimately decide that they want 6 quality months, but she also ends up doing the chemo. So that was a little disjointed for me. But I guess from a conversation topic of what would you do? What would you do if you had the choice of I can have 6 months and I'm probably still healthy and okay and feeling all right, and I'm going to enjoy my life to the fullest, or doing the 12 months, hoping that it sticks and that you get better, but in the time of that 12 months, you're sick and you feel crappy and you're going through chemo and life is really hard.
So I think this actually does matter a lot as to maybe where you are in life.
Great. Age probably is a big factor here.
Like, if you get past it, how much life do you expect to have left? And if you're like in your 20s and 30s, even if they say you have 12 months to live, I'm still fighting through it because, one, new treatments for cancers are being found all the time. And number two, I have heard countless stories of someone who had 6 months, a year, 2 years to live, and a decade later, they're still around.
Yeah, it would be really hard for me to just be like, okay, I'm just going to go for the 6 really good months and give up hope on beating it and giving up hope on having more life than that. Because like you said, there's plenty of doctors who give diagnoses. And I personally have had that experience with veterinarians who have told me, a dog has 6 weeks or 1 month or 2 months, and they've lived to be, a year and a half, 2 years later. So, medical professionals only know so much.
Yeah. I feel like my age would have to start with at least a 7, maybe an 8 for me to start looking at it and going, nah, let's just enjoy what we got left.
I don't know if I could ever throw in the towel at any age, because that's kind of what that is. That said, I would imagine that the older you get, the harder physically that is.
Yeah, I mean, you hit a certain point where, like...
But if you also have a bunch of other things wrong with you, or if it's just cancer, if other than that, I mean, there's so many variables, but it would be really hard for me to be like, well, they said I'm a goner, so let's just have a good 6 months and... I'm not going to try. That's basically what you're saying is I'm not going to try. And I don't think I could do that.
And really, I mean, in a way, it just has to do with asking the question of how ready am I for death?
Right.
And like, you could have someone in their 30s who's like, you know what? I've already done a ton of things. I'm good. And you could have someone in their 90s saying, I still got things I need to get done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, age is not necessarily the barrier on that.
And your quality of life otherwise. Like, if you have a rich, full life with a lot to live for, or if you're someone that's maybe alone in this world and is battling a lot of hard stuff, and maybe you're inclined to just be like, okay, let's put a period at the end of this. So there's a lot of things that someone can consider.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people,
that would be,
you could be at the point of essentially wanting a merciful end. And that's a bad way of looking at it. But I mean,
well, in her course of the time frame, at that point, she was probably in her late 30s, and she had a good career as a chef. And she definitely had a lot to live for, and her daughter and her partner. And
actually, I've got to think she was probably into her 40s at that point, because they were 34 when they first started having that conversation. The daughter was, 6 or 7 probably?
I don't think she was 7. I was thinking like maybe 5 or 6.
Okay, so 6. And like, they had to get to the point, like, they had a hard time conceiving. So my guess is there was probably a couple of years in there as well of attempting to. Like, you don't be like, oh, well, we had sex once and there's no kid. Got to go to a fertility person. That shit's expensive. But yeah, I've got to think, yeah, probably early to mid 40s at that point.
Quite frankly, that's really prime of your life. You know, when you got momentum going on the career and you've got the family on track, that's a prime point in many people's lives.
Yeah, that's when your body should still have enough in it to do the things you want, and hopefully your bank account does too.
Yeah. So one of the other things as we explore the topics of this film is she wants to do this cooking competition, even though she's undergoing chemo treatment, and she wants to leave a legacy. She wants her daughter to know that she did something meaningful while she was on this planet. And it turns out the cooking competition is the same day she's supposed to get married to Tobias. Even though they've been together all this time, they haven't been married. And the cooking competition is June 5th and 6th, and they had set a wedding date for June 5th. And she doesn't come clean with this information. She's training for this cooking competition in secret without disclosing it to Tobias. And Tobias finds out and basically says, how could you not tell me about what you're doing? You know, you're pushing yourself, you're making it harder on your body. Do your doctors know? And then throughout the conversation, he learns that this competition is on the same day.
Well, and she had already told him that she wasn't going to do it. Like, she'd been approached and she said, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So now we kind of have the whole lying thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you call it what you will. That's lying. And I'm never going to support lying to your spouse. Maybe there's a corner case here and there where it might make sense, but as a general rule, you definitely shouldn't, or spouse or prospective spouse, and especially once you come up with the date thing, like that should have been an immediate. If you hadn't come clean before that, you have to come clean immediately at that point and say, listen, I have this thing that's come up now, and it's going to directly conflict with our wedding. I don't know the world of European cooking. I don't know exactly how important this was, but it seemed like it was extremely high profile, like kind of living your dream type.
Very much so. It was something that she wanted to be successful at before she passed away. And she had already been in competitive sports as an ice skater and done really well. And she stopped doing that when her father got sick and died. So she definitely was a competitive person. So it makes sense that she wanted to do this. But the way that it transpired, and then when Tobias finds this out and she basically chooses the competition and he throws out the wedding invitations, it was just very sad. But he did go and support her at the cooking competition, and she passed away after that. We don't know how long.
Yeah. So I'm in favor of moving the wedding at that point. I know, I get it. You can have lots of deposits and stuff like that, but in theory, you should still know far enough away that maybe you can get those things moved to another date. And explain the situation. And I think a lot of times you can probably, I mean, if it's a week before, now you're screwed. But if it's months.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, as an observer, I feel like the wedding was particularly important because she was passing away. And I think, although not articulated, I think there was a part of Tobias. He proposed to her once he already knew she had cancer and was going. So I feel like there was a part of him that really wanted to be married to her throughout this process, and to, I don't want to say deny him that, but to be more indifferent toward that, like
an FU.
Yeah,
I mean,
an assault to the relationship in some respect.
I mean, it really was, especially the fact that she didn't come clean. Like, again, this is the problem you can solve. This is not a problem that is that life altering. Yes, it's probably a pain in the ass to move the date of the wedding, but you can't move the date of the competition.
Right.
And if the competition's that important, and that's the other thing too, you got to be honest with your partner about stuff like this. Like, they need to know how important it is. And now I can understand his thing where he's like, you've put your health in jeopardy to do this competition. And you know me, I am very much about your health and keeping it. But at the same respect, I feel like what she had going on was probably equally as important. Like it was. I mean, that's like when you have these huge personal goals, and to be that close to it, and like,
in a dwindling time frame to achieve them.
Yeah, I'm willing to risk my health in that scenario.
I think it's important. What would you do? If it were me, I would certainly, even if I was doing something that would make someone unhappy, just from a safety standpoint, I think I would disclose what I was doing and where I was, because when your health is that compromised at any given moment, something could happen, you could collapse. And if your loved ones don't know where you are because you're doing something in secret, that could have disastrous consequences as well.
Yeah, like completely. I mean, again, it just goes back to honesty with your partner. You have to be honest with your partner. And if you can't be honest with your partner, you have the wrong partner.
Yeah. So I guess my final thought here is what every hashtag is, what every bumper sticker is
Thoughts and prayers?
F cancer.
Oh, F cancer.
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release 2 to 3 episodes weekly, so we'll have new content regularly. Until next time.